If I told you that blue eyes do not exist, that there is literally no such thing as blue pigment in the human body, you would probably tell me to look in a mirror. But biologically, I am telling you the truth. If you took a scalpel to a blue iris, you wouldn't find a single drop of blue ink. You would find a cloudy, colorless fog. You're not looking at a color. You're looking at a biological optical illusion. You're looking at a trick of physics that hasn't happened since the sky turned blue this morning. Most people treat eye color as a triviality, a genetic roll of the dice. But that is a comforting lie we tell ourselves to ignore the staggering complexity of our own construction. Your eyes are not a fashion statement. They are a receipt. They are a timestamp from a time before history was written. If you have blue eyes, you're walking around with a genetic glitch that happened to a single individual 6,000 years ago, a ghost in your DNA that refuses to die. If you have green eyes, you are a statistical paradox, a collision between the ice and the sun that shouldn't technically exist. And if you have that specific, piercing, pale stare found in the hollows of Kentucky and West Virginia, you are carrying the evidence of a secret American history that the census takers tried to erase. In the next 20 minutes, we are going to decode the signals hidden in your iris. We are going to explain why hazel is actually a structural, chaotic event, why brown eyes are the ultimate biological shield, and why your eyes might be the most accurate DNA test you never took. Stop looking at your driver's license. If you want to know who you really are, you need to look at the light. Let's start with the mutation that changed the face of the Western world. If you carry the gene for blue eyes, you are a walking, breathing anomaly, a biological mutant, in the strictest scientific sense of the word. For 95% of human history, every single distinct species of hominid on this planet had dark brown eyes. It was not a choice. It was armor. The sun is a nuclear reactor hanging in the sky, bombarding the surface of the Earth with ultraviolet radiation that shatters DNA strands and cooks biological tissue. Melanin, that rich, dark brown pigment, is the shield evolution built to absorb that radiation before it could burn out the delicate optical nerves or trigger lethal mutations. To have light eyes in the cradle of humanity was a death sentence. It was like walking into a battlefield without a helmet. But then, the ice moved. As humanity pushed north, away from the relentless intensity of the equatorial sun and into the gloom of the European winter, the calculation changed. The shield became a burden. In the low light of the north, you didn't need to block the sun. You needed to let it in. You needed to synthesize vitamin D. And somewhere in that darkness, roughly 10,000 years ago, likely on the shores of the Black Sea, a single individual was born with a typo in their genetic code. It wasn't a gene for blue eyes because there is no blue pigment to code for. The gene that mutated, HERK2, was a switch. It was supposed to tell another gene, OCA2, to flood the iris with brown melanin. But the switch got stuck. It jammed halfway open. It turned the pigment factory off, leaving the top layer of the iris clear. And this is where the physics of your face becomes terrifyingly beautiful. Your eyes are blue for the exact same reason the sky is blue. It is a phenomenon called Rayleigh scattering, or the Tyndall Effect. When white light hits that clear, turbid layer of your iris, the shorter blue wavelengths scatter and bounce back out to the observer, while the longer, red and yellow wavelengths pass through and are absorbed by the dark layer underneath. You are not seeing a color. You are seeing the scattering of light through a microscopic fog. You are a biological optical illusion, holding a piece of the sky in your skull because one ancestor 10 millennia ago survived a genetic glitch. Every single blue-eyed person on Earth today is a direct descendant of that one individual. You are part of a massive, sprawling, incestuous clan that spans from the fjords of Norway to the hollows of Kentucky. And speaking of Kentucky, this is where the American story begins to twist the narrative. In the United States, eye color is not just a marker of European ancestry, it is a marker of isolation. There is a specific piercing shade of blue found in the Appalachian Mountains, a pale, almost ice-white blue that seems to cut right through you. It is often paired with dark hair and olive skin, a phenotype that has confused census takers and genealogists for centuries. This is the Appalachian Stare. It is the visual legacy of the founder effect. When a small group of families, the Scots-Irish, the Border-Ivers, the defiant settlers who hated the British crown, moved into the mountains and locked the doors, they trapped that recessive blue eye mutation in a genetic bottle. In the general population, brown eyes are dominant. They wash out the blue. But in the hollows, where cousins married cousins to keep the land in the family, the blue didn't fade. It concentrated. It became a signal flare of the tribe. If you're fascinated by these hidden histories, by the idea that your face is a map of forgotten migrations and secret lineages, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We are building the definitive archive of American bloodlines, and we are going to peel back the skin of history to show you the bones underneath. You do not want to miss the deep dives we have coming on the Gullah, the Cajuns, and the lost colonies of the West. But the story gets murkier. What about the eyes that refuse to pick a side? What about green? What about hazel? If blue is a switch turned off, and brown is a switch turned on, green is a switch that is flickering, sparking, and creating something rare. Green eyes are the result of a collision. You start with the blue structural base, the clear stroma scattering light. But then you introduce a contaminant, a pigment called lipochrome, a yellowish tint that usually hides in the background. When you mix the structural blue of the scattering light with the chemical yellow of the lipochrome, you get green. It is basic color theory playing out in the microscopic fibers of your iris. Biologically, this is incredibly expensive to produce. It requires a precise balance of low melanin and high lipochrome. That is why green eyes are the rarest eye color on planet Earth, appearing in less than 2% of the global population. Historically, they mark the borderlands. They appear where the blue-eyed hunter-gatherers of the north crashed into the brown-eyed farmers migrating up from the Near East. They are the color of the Celtic fringe, the color of the Bronze Age collision, and in America, they are the color of the mutt. They are the sign that your lineage did not stay in one lane. And then there is the enigma of hazel. Most people write hazel off as light brown. That is a mistake. Hazel is a structural chaotic event. It is what happens when the melanin concentration is not uniform. In a hazel eye, you often have a burst of brown or gold around the pupil, a sunburst pattern, surrounded by a ring of green or gray. This is known as central heterochromia, and it is a sign that the pigment distribution in your iris was unstable during your embryonic development. It shifts with the light. It changes with the dilation of the pupil. It is a dynamic, living color that reflects the complexity of a lineage that straddles the line between the light and the dark. In the American South, this eye color is often the hallmark of the Melungeon families, groups that were labeled Free People of Color or Black Dutch, whose ancestry was a forbidden mix of European, African, and indigenous blood. The hazel eye was the passport that allowed them to pass, the ambiguous feature that defied the rigid racial laws of the time. But we have to talk about the brown eyes, the 80%. In our culture, we have fetishized the rare. We have decided that light eyes are special and dark eyes are plain. This is a profound misunderstanding of biological engineering. Brown eyes are not the default. They are the masterpiece. The brown iris is a high-performance machine designed for visual acuity in high-contrast environments. The melanin absorbs scattered light, reducing glare and sharpening the image that hits the retina. There is a reason why elite baseball players have a statistically higher incidence of brown eyes than the general population. Their eyes process visual data faster and with less noise. But in the context of American genetics, brown eyes are also the great masker. Because the brown trait is dominant, it can hide anything. You can be a brown-eyed person carrying the gene for blue eyes, green eyes, and gray eyes, all silently passing down your bloodline, waiting for the right partner to unlock them. This is why two brown-eyed parents in Chicago can suddenly produce a blue-eyed child. It's not a scandal, it's a revelation. It means that somewhere in your family tree, hidden behind the shield of melanin, a recessive gene has been hitchhiking for centuries, surviving the Middle Passage, surviving the potato famine, surviving the Ellis Island inspections, just to surface in the 21st century. Finally, we must address the ghosts, the gray eyes. True gray eyes are not just faded blue, they are physically, structurally different. In a blue eye, the stroma contains very little collagen. In a gray eye, the stroma is packed with collagen deposits. This changes the physics of the light scattering. Instead of just scattering the blue wavelengths, the collagen creates Mie scattering. It scatters all the wavelengths of light equally. It is the same difference between the sky, which is blue, and a storm cloud, which is gray. The sky scatters. The cloud reflects. If you possess true gray eyes, you are carrying a marker that is incredibly specific to the Baltic region and the extreme north of Europe. In an American context, this usually signals a more recent arrival, ancestors who came from the deep Scandinavian or Germanic populations well after the initial colonial wave. You are carrying the eyes of the Vikings, the Goths, the people who lived in the perpetual twilight of the northern winters. But the eyes go deeper than just color. We need to talk about the limbal ring. Look at your iris again. Is there a dark, thick black line separating the color from the white of your eye? That is the limbal ring. Subconsciously, human beings find this attractive because it is a signal of youth and health. It fades as we age. But genetically, a thick, persistent limbal ring is often a marker of specific European ancestry. It is most prominent in populations from the British Isles and Scandinavia. If you are American and have one, it is another breadcrumb leading back to the North Sea. There is a misconception that eye color is simple. We learn in high school biology that one gene controls it. Big B for brown, little b for blue. That is a lie. Eye color is polygenic. It is controlled by at least 16 different genes interacting in a complex symphony. Genes like OCA2 and HERC2 do the heavy lifting, but genes like SLC24A4 and TYR are the artists adding the shading, the specks, and the patterns. This is why you can have violet eyes, like Elizabeth Taylor, which are essentially deep blue eyes, with enough red blood vessel reflection to create a purple hue. This is why you can have amber eyes, which are solid gold, created by an excess of lipochrome without the melanin to darken it. The variation is infinite because the genetic combinations are infinite, but the patterns are not random. They follow the bloodlines. When we look at the history of America, we usually look at maps and treaties. We should be looking at eyes. The migration of the English Puritans brought the blue. The arrival of the enslaved Africans brought the deep, protected brown. The Scots-Irish brought the green and the hazel. And then, in the melting pot of the frontier, these genes collided. They mixed. They created new combinations that had never existed in the old world. Your face is not a random collection of features. It is a receipt. It is an archive. When you look in the mirror, you are looking at the end result of a million-year experiment in survival. The blue is the ice, the brown is the sun, the green is the collision. We are just the vessels carrying this ancient code into the future. And as we continue to mix, to blend, to migrate, we are writing new chapters into that biological history book. But the old chapters, the ones written in the Ice Age and the desert, are still there, staring back at you every morning. So, the next time you look in the mirror, don't just check your hair. Look at the map. Read the receipt. And if you are ready to decode the rest of your biology, to understand the shape of your teeth, the structure of your skull, and the secrets of your blood type, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. We are just getting started.